Chroma Prime. He's been my favourite Warframe for a long time. Been trying to get him to be my most used Warframe on my profile for as long as I can remember. Pretty much since he came out. I really enjoyed Chroma before Chroma Prime actually came out, as you can imagine. For me, he's always just been an awesome Warframe in terms of the pure survivability and the actual damage potential that he has. And his fourth ability, believe it or not, is what I assume to be one of his most underrated abilities within the actual game. So in this video, let's take a look at what builds I have for Chroma, and we're going to be taking a look at an in-depth analysis of Chroma Prime himself. So first of all, before we actually go into any builds, we're going to go over his powers and what they do and what they actually mean. So first of all, we've got Spectral Scream, a very useless ability, to be honest. So it reads, exhale a deep breath of elemental destruction. Chroma's emissive colour determines the element. So that is basically the passive for Chroma. So the colours here, this one, what you see my cursor over now, depending what that is, actually changes his element for all his abilities. So if you have it white, the abilities are going to be like a frost, cold. If you have it green, it's going to be toxin. If you have it red, it's going to be fire. Or if you have it blue, it's going to be electricity. And depending on what shade you actually use of them, certain colours also will give it that like said element. So if you go more orange, it will still class as red and it'll be fire. But this ability is quite useless. This is the one that I just never use. I don't recommend to use it. If you want to do any damage, it's best off just using your weapons. There's no reason to use this ability whatsoever. So you can see the base stats for this ability. When you first activate it, it drains 10 energy, and then for every second it's active, it will drain 3 additional energy. The damage per second starts at 200, depending which elemental type you actually have on your Chroma, depends on what damage it's obviously going to do. Frost will slow your enemies and basically just freeze them in place. Electricity will hit the enemies and hit all the other enemies around it. Toxin damage is probably the most damaging one, and obviously it will go straight through some shields. And then fire will also cause the enemies to panic. Will obviously do a lot of damage towards armor too. Range, it starts at 10 meters, but with my build, I don't really focus on this ability, so I put the range down. I do normally run a selfish Chroma build, so if you want to use this ability effectively, you do need to build for range. Status chance is quite high with 60%. I don't think you can actually get that up at all, so don't try to get that up. Next up we have Elemental Ward, which is very useful for Chroma 2. So if you have electricity as your base element, then you will gain extra shields, and enemies that shoot you, it will reflect damage back with sparks of electricity. And if enemies get close or melee you or whatever, the electricity will also latch onto them and do damage. Toxin actually increases your holster speed, your reload speed, all this kind of stuff. So it increases your agility a little bit with Chroma. Very useful if that's what you prefer. If you want to go that route instead of extra protection, then why not? And also enemies that come close will take toxin damage. Fire, that increases the health of Chroma whilst it's active. Very useful. So you can just take more damage, and then enemies that come close will be set on fire too. And then cold is the preferred element for this ability for a lot of people, whereas it will increase your base armor and then also reflect damage back to enemies that actually shoot at you. The armor increase on this is very useful. As you can see, the base stats are at the bottom, so we have 50 drain when you actually activate this ability. It has a 12 meter radius because basically allies that are close to you will also gain the buff too. The duration at base is 25 seconds. The cold, which is how I have it now, will give you 150 extra armor at base. The damage multiplier goes from 3 to 6.3 with my build, so this is how much damage the enemies actually reflect back to themselves, so a decent chunk, but not effective to actually kill all the enemies. And status chance is 25 at base. Basically, when the enemies actually get the bullets reflected back to them with this ability when it's cold, they can also inflict a status proc of cold onto themselves, which will slow them down. His next ability is Vex Armor, which does not get affected by your energy colour. So the base of this ability is basically when your shields are hit, Chroma and nearby allies' armor grows stronger. When health takes a hit, weapon damage is increased instead. So this is an ability that you want to keep up at all times. So if we look at the stats, the drain when you first activate it is 75. The duration will be 25 seconds. The radius of which it will affect allies is 18 meters. The armor increase at base is 350. The damage increase at base is 275. Basically, as you're getting hit, your shields are getting hit, it will increase your armor. So when your health and armor starts getting hit, you'll have increased armor. And then whilst you have increased armor, whilst that is getting hit, whilst your shields are depleted, you'll gain more weapon damage, which is very strong. If you go for a full strength build of like over 300% damage, power strength with Chroma, you can get an extra like 1000 or so damage. And this damage that is added to your weapons basically acts as a serration mod. So it will not multiply your serration or your heavy caliber, which will increase damage on your weapons. It will actually just add on top of it, so it does not multiply it. So in a lot of ways you do not need serration, like on your rifles for example, because it's just additive, so you're not actually getting that much if you have serration on too. So if you actually have elemental damage mods on top of your Vex armor buff instead, it's a lot more beneficial because you're actually multiplying the elemental damage rather than just adding to the serration, if that makes sense. And now his final ability, which I think is one of the most underrated abilities in the game. Chroma turns his pelt into a massive sentry that strengthens nearby allies and engulfs enemies in elemental attacks. Basically, he sheds his skin, it will sit in the air and it will act like almost like a turret, and depending on which elemental type you actually have equipped, like on your energy colour, will depend like what kind of damage he actually inflicts on enemies and status procs and whatever. So the base stats, 50 energy as the base drain, and then for every second you will drain 10 energy. So this one is quite heavy on the energy unless you go for efficiency, of course. At base he will do 400 damage, at base it will have 8000 health. And then also, as a little bonus, it will have a little credit multiplier too, which is 2 times credits, and extra credit chance to actually drop is 60%. And also, when your skin is shedded, you will get a 20% speed increase at the cost of a 50% armor reduction. So if you want to move around a little bit quicker, but be a little bit more open to damage, then you can do that if you want. When you're just running to objectives, it's just good to shed your skin and just get running. You will just, move a lot quicker. And you cannot increase this base. So if you take a look at what builds I have, this is what I call my versatile build. This is the one that I use primarily on any ordinary missions when I'm doing, let's say, Q villages, relic runs, whatever. This one is basically built to keep his second, third and fourth ability up. So basically we have a good duration, so the powers last a decent amount of time. We have a really decent efficiency too, so we can cast our powers as much as possible and it reduces the drain on the effigy. And then also we have a decent amount of strength at 210%, so that our second and third ability get really high in terms of damage numbers and how much armor we actually get. My range is negative 34% because this is what you call a selfish Chroma build, so I've not built it to actually rely or help other teammates out. So we actually take a look at what mods I have. So in the aura slot we have growing power. Now I use growing power in conjunction or in tandem with Pax Bolt. So growing power, if you inflict a status effect on an enemy, it will increase your the next power. It will increase the strength of that next power that you cast by 25%. And then also, if you add it on top of Pax Bolt on headshot kill with this particular kit gun, 100% chance for plus 30% ability efficiency and 30% ability strength on the next ability use for 4 seconds. So, basically, if I get a headshot and a status effect, I can get an extra 55% ability strength. So, technically, we can get 265% ability strength if we have these two things proc. So, that arcane and the growing power. That's why I use them. In terms of other mods, we've got Transient Fortitude, we've got Narrow-Minded, Hunter Adrenaline, because you want to be taking damage anyway, so you might as well get some energy back whilst you're taking some damage, of course. Fleeting Expertise, we've got Umbral Intensify and Umbral Vitality, we've got Primed Continuity, and then also I've got Primed Sure-Footed because I don't like getting knocked down, and I believe this is one of the stronger mods in the game right now, especially with the explosive meta thing we got going. So, as you can see, I can't really fit anything else on this build. If I wanted to make this build as perfect as possible and get an Excellence mod up there, then I would need another Umbral Former in Chroma, but I don't think that's going to happen. I want to spend it somewhere else, of course. So, and then in terms of Arcanes, we've got Arcane Grace and Arcane Avenger. So this allows me to use my second and third ability quite effectively. Not to its absolute full potential with these abilities, but my fourth ability is also very usable. And this ability actually provides so much CC, crowd control for the enemies, and actually kills them pretty effectively too. If you put this Effigy on top of a defense objective or a mobile defense, usually the enemies will try to kill the Effigy first. And at the same time, the Effigy will be blinding the enemies, they'll be pushing them back, he'll be damaging them. It's basically like another soldier on the field that just doesn't move. There's a augment for this ability, Guided Effigy, so you can point and move it to wherever you want, but I can't really get it to fit onto my build. That's what I would like to have there, and then this I would have up there, but it's not happening. If in a perfect world, you know, I would do that. But so let's look at the strength build that I've got going for him. So this strength build is what I used to use for Eidolons, but now I use it primarily for Profit Taker. That's why it's got the Arcane Nullifier. And then also if I want to go against bosses or I just want pure damage and survivability. This is basically a Naros on steroids, basically. So first of all, we've got Steel Charge. This is obviously very useful for Zors and just increasing Zor damage, because the amount of damage you can get out of a Zor with this build is unbelievable. So that's why we've got Steel Charge in there, but also increases my aura by an extra 4 slots compared to what I had with Growing Power. Instead of the Prime Sure-Footed on this build, I've got Handspring just to fit it in there, because on this build I've got all 3 Umbral mods. So I've got Umbral Vitality, Umbral Armor and Umbral Strength Intensify, just to get these mods as powerful as possible. Then also we've got Augur Secrets for extra strength, Blind Rage for extra strength, Narrow-Minded for good duration, as you can see. Don't really care about range on this build either. Transient Fortitude for extra strength, then Prime Continuity for more duration. So as you can see on the stats to the left, we have 217% duration, so the powers are going to keep up quite a while. As you can see on my Vex armor, it stays up for 54 seconds, which is not bad, but I have a minus 45% efficiency. So very cost hungry for energy, but the strength is at 344%. Now if I could get Growing Power on there, so if we remove this, and we actually got Growing Power on there instead, and then if you can imagine, if we use the Pax Bolt, we would get about 400% power strength, which, you know, a lot of people overlook. Well, I think it'll be like 409% power strength. Yeah, a lot of people will overlook that and not actually think about Growing Power and Pax Bolt, but you can get a lot of damage. As you can see at the bottom, the armor increase from Vex armor with this strength is 1,200, and the damage increase is 940%. So if you have Pax Bolt and Growing Power on top of that, it'll probably be about 1,150% damage increase, something like that. But I don't really like running without handspring or prime sure-footed, so that's the reason why I haven't gone for that build. So let's look at the stats. We've got 1100 armor and 1000 health on top of all the extra armor that we get from our ability. So you can you can add another 1200% armor on top of that. If you can fit adaptation onto this build as well, then you just will not die. But yeah, this is very good for when you just want to kill stuff. When you're going against bosses, whatever, this is a very good build to go with. That's why I prefer it over Inaros, because I mean, you cannot say that this build is not tanky. This build is very tanky compared to it, even close to Inaros tanky, and on top of that you've got a ridiculous amount of extra weapon damage too. So the only thing with this is that you've actually got to maintain your powers and keep them up, which in terms of energy can be quite costly, but we have other ways of getting energy. So other ways of getting energy would be Energize, of course, Arcane Energize. If you did the Scarlet Spear event, then you hopefully should have this, otherwise you get it from Eidolons or other players. The other way I mainly get my energy is from Zenuric. So on Zenuric I will use, if we go here, Energizing Dash. So if I go to my Tenno, I dash onto the ground, it will create a zone of energy for 8 seconds, and then if any allies or myself pass through this, I'll get 5 energy for per second for 30 seconds. And from my experience, if I cast both of my 2 and my 3, by the time I get all my energy back from Zenuric within 30 seconds, I've got enough energy to cast these both again. So, but basically it works very well with Zenuric. That's all you really need. Of course you can use energy pads too, which I've always got on standby in case I need them. So yes, that's how we get energy back, that's how we keep the energy going. In terms of getting health back, because of course you've got all this massive health pool, so you want to get energy back, you want to get health back. I always use Arcane Grace. You're taking damage all the time, so ideally you want to be, Arcane Grace is perfect because you have to take damage to get health regeneration. So if your Grace actually procs with Chroma, you're basically not going to die, or you're going to find it very hard to die. It's a lot easier to stay alive than it is to die. So other ways of getting health back are actually my Kubro. Yeah, so my Kubro actually has Hunter Recovery, so as he is damaging enemies, he will also be giving me health back. As you can see on the left on his stats, he does a lot of damage. 2000 damage with a 43% critical chance with 9.6% critical multiplier. If he actually gets a critical hit, he'll basically just you get all your health back easily. Especially if you're using a melee with Chroma, then you're keeping your Kubro alive too with the pack leader, where you heal your Kubro when you're actually hitting the enemies. So basically you and your Kubro are basically working together to keep yourself alive. And as long as your Kubro is alive, then you never really die, honestly. Okay, then on top of that, for getting health back very easily and actually regenerating all the health of your teammates around you too, I use Magus Repair, which is an arcane that you buy from Little Duck. So on Void mode, so when you hold your LB and your Tenno is invisible, you will heal all the Warframes around you within 25 meters by 25% of their health. So you just go to Void mode for a couple of seconds and you've got half of your health back. Or if you want to sit in it for 4 seconds, you'll get all your health back straight away, and also help your allies at the same time. So that's how you make your Chroma as survivable, tanky, as damaging as possible. Yeah, from my experience, definitely one of the strongest Warframes within the game. Very underrated, especially now. For some reason, everybody is complaining that, oh, they took out self-damage, so Chroma cannot hurt himself anymore and actually get his Vex armor up. At the end of the day, if you're not getting hit that much and you cannot get your Vex armor buff to go up, then you don't need it. If you're not getting hit, then you don't need it, and if you're killing enemies, then you don't need to get your Vex armor buff up. So I think that argument is kind of not really valid, to be fair. Yeah, and at the same time, the first build that I show you, the versatile one, where we have the Effigy as a usable prop, that is extremely useful. It'll become your best ally at some point, and even when you have your Effigy out, if you call it back just to gain a bit of armor when you really need it, when you're surrounded by enemies, very useful. and if you just cast it out when you're surrounded by enemies, it will crowd control for you, and very useful piece of kit. So when I'm using my Chroma, the other stuff I actually use, or the other weapons I actually use my Ogress with the prime sure-footed or the handspring. So this is my big crowd damaging weapon. So this will actually just destroy crowds of enemies and lock down areas of the room with Nightwatch Napalm. I have a video on the Ogress, which is doing quite well, so I do appreciate the people that are watching that video. And then also I use my kick gun, because of course it's got Pax Bolt, and this is my favourite kick gun by far anyway. I have a ribbon on it, it's overpowered, simple. And then also I use Gram Prime with Chroma because it's meant to be his signature prime weapon, so also it's just generally very good, so that's why I use that. And then I use my Senika Kubro. Another fun thing to use with Chroma is actually the Grappler. Look at that. It's such a big boy, my god. This is very fun to use. It's just like a rapid fire Brammer in a way. It just fires explosive shells, and if you've got prime sure-footed, you're not going to knock yourself down, and you just destroy crowds of enemies, and he looks awesome too. I mean, look at that. It's such a big boy. I mean, shit. So yeah, that's basically how I run my Chroma. If you have any questions about it, obviously comments within the comment section below. Tell me some ways that you actually run Chroma. I'm aware that I've not gone over like a team kind of build for Chroma because I don't really think he's effective as a team player. I think he's really effective as a solo player when you're playing by yourself. Unless you're using the Effigy, of course, then that's very team related, and they get extra credits too, so they cannot complain. So yes, if you enjoyed the build, if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. If you've got any constructive criticism, then you can leave a dislike if you wish. A like or a dislike is appreciated because it shows if I'm doing something right or wrong. If you've got anything to say, like constructive criticism, then please leave it in the comments and we can talk about it and see how I can improve. Of course, subscribe if you want to see some more builds, if you want to see some more gameplay. I do play other games too, not just Warframe, but primarily Warframe. I'm a little bit sad on Warframe, so thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next video. Good luck with your Warframe grind, and I'll catch you later.